Hey, folks, how you doing? Excited to be back for week 10. We're rolling along. I know that that we're kind of switching things up in here and trying some different things week to week. But hopefully you're telling other folks to join us and subscribe below, like and subscribe. And we're on every medium that you can get your podcast. Also on Instagram and Twitter/X.
That Friday drop was what a success. I mean, holy cow.
Yeah.
What's the opposite?
Yeah.
What's the opposite of success?
Failure would be it. Yeah. I'm thinking,
but like Roger's saying, we're playing around with a few things. We wanted to drop it on a Friday morning for your commute, but apparently you all are programmed and locked in on Thursday nights to watch it in combination with the game. I love it. So we're going to stick to that formula. But again, we're always tinkering with things and we're trying to bring you the best product. So look out for that and just stick with us. And like Roger was saying, make sure that you're subscribing to our YouTube channel and our IG, both at the Don't Ask Me Why podcast. So make sure we're doing that. Spread the word. We're growing. We're catching steam. So let's make it happen, guys.
And we have some exciting things that we're gonna be talking about a little bit later in the program in terms of picking up steam.
Speaking of picking up steam, hey, the DAMW boys are back. 4-2 last week. So we kind of floundered a little in week 8 and week 9. In week 7 and week 8. Week 9, we picked things back up. We had a 4-2 week. That's 66%. That's pretty much where we've been, on a consistent basis, which brings us to an overall record of 22, 18, and 2, which brings our win percentage up to 55%. That's still pretty damn good. What you think, Raj?
It's real good. I mean, our resident expert, Chris from Hollywood Casino, who was on 2 weeks ago, told us that, hey, you guys are at the time we were clicking at, I think, 57%. And he said, the professionals out in Vegas would be very happy to have that for a season. And we're looking to exceed that. We had a couple of bad weeks. We've been consistently good before that. And we're looking to pick it back up again this week. So we'll have our picks at the end of the show.
Absolutely. I felt good about last week's picks. I feel good about this week's picks after seeing yours. I feel good about mine. So let's get things started. Week 9 recap. I mean, what can we say about CJ Stroud? He really has been consistently looking great up to this point, and this was his coming out moment, it seemed like, in this last game. His drive, if you will, for his rookie season. I mean, it was like 36 seconds left. They needed a touchdown. I just
unbelievable
watching that on Red Zone and just seeing that happening, because I truly thought, because I saw Baker Mayfield, he came off the field, he was popping his collar and just had all types of swag.
Sure.
Like, I got you. We got this, Tampa. We'll see you next week, Tampa Bay. And then this young man comes out and just 4 plays.
I think it was a 5-play drive.
5 plays, just some unbelievable, courageous, ballsy plays and ballsy throws. I was just so impressed. And really, I just kind of look back on, the draft and how these quarterbacks were ranked and how he was number 1 and Richardson was number 1, Bryce was number 1. So it's really hard to determine.
Right.
But he's really looking like, in hindsight, that he is that dude out of this rookie class.
Yeah. I mean, no bad thoughts or comments about Baker. He did everything that he needed to do to win that football game. Tampa's defense is letting them down on a weekly basis. That the pass defense is horrific. And I don't know if it's personnel issue. I'm not sure if it's an injury type thing, but man, they got to get that corrected, because their offense is doing okay throughout the season. So they started out pretty much on fire. I think they were like 3-0. Is that
I'm
right?
Not sure.
2-0 or 3-0.
They started out good.
They started out hot. And but that's a game that you have to win. You can't score with 36, 38 seconds left and lose in the NFL. You just can't do it because it not only is a loss, but it deflates the team in general. I mean, I wouldn't want to have been on that flight on the way
Yeah,
back
yeah.
to Tampa.
What Stroud this season is reminding me of is Deshaun Watson, his rookie season. He had a 5-game run where he threw
Right.
for 18 touchdowns. I want to say 8 picks, but he was just on fire for this 5-game stretch. And he unfortunately got
Yeah.
injured. And that made me think about the
Right.
Texans and how they've quietly had some very consistent, strong drafts with minimal success. But they've made it to the playoffs a few times. But it's so hard for teams to draft good quarterbacks. And within the past 6-7 years, they have drafted arguably, and the story still has to be written for CJ Stroud, but 2 premier quarterbacks in the NFL. So I think that shouldn't go unheralded as far as what the Texans franchise has done when it comes to the draft. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
Another one, Joshua Dobbs. I think we've spoken about him, and first of all, just his IQ, how smart he is, and how resilient he is. And the number of teams he's been on, it's like you look up and he's on a new team. He has a Steeler uniform on, and all of a sudden, oh, he's a Cardinal. And you turn around, oh, what the hell? He's a Viking. And what he did was just as impressive as what CJ Stroud did. Tell me about your reaction when you saw what our guy Joshua Dobbs did.
When I first thought about it, the word epic came to mind. I just think it was an epic performance. I can't imagine, like, Washington traded 2 of their key defensive players last week at the trade deadline, both defensive ends. And those are the type of positions where it's relatively easy to go in. In other words, how to play defensive end. You've been doing it your whole career. Schemes can be different, but you still line up at the same place, and it's not hard to ascertain whether or not a defense is going to have you bring pressure or or maybe fall back a little bit. A quarterback situation coming into a new team is completely different from the standpoint that you got to pick up the cadence of the snap. You got to pick up the different setups within a line for different plays. And from my understanding, he had no reps, no physical practice reps before that game. All he had was,
a jersey,
a couple of hours to study the plays, and again the cadences and things. It's unbelievable how good that was. Now, will it translate over into another great performance this week? I don't know, but it was something to behold, and it was something that people in Minnesota, I know from the media coverage, they've just glommed onto him, big time. So I think that they are not necessarily comfortable that he's going to take them to the playoffs or whatever, but they don't feel as bad as a lot of teams in the NFL who have had to pick up guys off the scrap heap.
He's very likable. He's very likable.
Likable.
Again, super intelligent. He's a rocket scientist. I forget what he majored at Tennessee. But
yeah, that was me too. I did that.
But yeah, right. I forgot about that. Yeah. And so he has all those things going for him. And just you saw what he did earlier in the season with Arizona, albeit they didn't necessarily win a lot of games. But
right.
Again, one of the common themes that we've had on this show is just singing the praises of just the effort that the Cardinals had shown and displayed up to this point. And a lot of that was because of Joshua Dobbs. So kudos to him. We'll see what happens next week. They got the Saints coming into town. So we'll see. We'll see.
You brought something up that is pretty important, though. There's another. Who was the other quarterback, Josh, that has been with like 16 teams? I'll come up with his name shortly. A quarterback, but with Dobbs and any of these guys that bounce around from team to team, once you get to a certain point of having done that, you kind of have, I guess, a method to being able to pick up things pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Right. Because you're kind of forced into it.
Right.
You're kind of thrown into the fire and you've been there before. And you know that, hey, here's what I need, coaching staff, as I come in. Here's what I need to be able to play on Sunday. You need to help me with this, this, and this. And I bet you that they, felt a lot more comfortable heaping all of those things on him last week than they would with someone else, because they were thinking about bringing in who was it? Colt McCoy.
Yeah, I agree. I think they do have, and especially now, we'll talk about in a second, especially now with so many backup quarterbacks who are starting, coaches are almost forced to have sort of a abridged playbook, a set of plays where it's like, here are 20 to 30 plays, between run, pass, the RPO. These are plays that are simple enough for not necessarily anyone to pick up, but journeymen who have been exposed to different systems.
Right.
So you've been on different teams, naturally you have seen different playbooks and have been exposed to different offenses, albeit play calls and the wording is different. But
yeah. And it was Josh Johnson.
Quarterback. Yeah. Right. Fitzpatrick. There are so many out there who have, been on several teams where it's almost like they're hired guns.
Yeah. Plug and play.
Absolutely. But you don't want to exist and live like that,
no,
as a team. But speaking of backup quarterbacks, I'm gonna throw these names at you. Okay. Gardner Minshew,
right.
Taylor Heineke, Zach Wilson, Aiden O'Connell, Tyson Bagent, Tommy DeVito. I love Tommy DeVito in Taxi. I mean, what was he? Louis De Palma? Oh my God. Yeah. And then Twins, I think.
Good. Yeah. No, actually it's Danny DeVito's son, I think. But
got it.
But
hold on. Clayton Tune.
Clayton Tune. Yeah.
We just named Joshua Dobbs. And remember, Joshua Dobbs came in as a backup to Jared Hall, who started for Minnesota. He gets injured, and in comes Joshua Dobbs as the backup. That's 25% of the league that is led by backup quarterbacks. So my question is this bad for the league?
It's funny. I had a knee-jerk reaction to that exact question when you and I talked about it earlier in the week. And then I talked to a friend of mine at work who's, a big NFL fan, and he had the complete opposite take on it that I did. Like, my take on it originally was, no, I don't think it's bad for the league, because there's so many stories yet to be heard or seen of guys that no one's ever heard of, coming out and getting a chance to play after being on taxi squads and practice squads and second and third string for years. And all of a sudden they get their chance and they catch fire. Gardner Minshew has certainly made the most out of his, chances. And there are others like that. But the friend of mine I was talking to said, absolutely not. He said, I think it's bad for the NFL because he said the average person, if you're going to go to a game and spend hundreds of dollars or take your wife, girlfriend, kids, whatever to a game, you want to be there seeing star players. You don't want to be going there seeing guys that you've never heard of before, like a Clayton Tune or some of these other guys. So there's two sides to that. I would just point back as the ultimate example would be Brady, right? 6th round draft pick, and then the greatest of all time. So I'm sure that when he got into his first couple of games with New England, people weren't thinking that it was anything fantastic, but here we are 20 years later.
Yeah, yeah, and really, I'm looking at this list. Minshew, and the Colts
mustache.
won. Heineke, did the Falcons?
No,
They lost. They lost.
Yeah.
Zach Wilson lost. Aiden O'Connell lost. So it was about 50-50, but ultimately,
no, Aiden O'Connell won. Right?
Okay, right. So Tyson Bagent lost, but as far as just the rest of these, it's about 50-50. But I recall back in 87 when the players went on strike.
Yeah.
And then you had the scabs that crossed the line, and so you had this, these nondescript players playing the game for about a 3-week period. And you're like, who are these? And I was 9 at the time, but I remember that vividly. Like, who is this playing for the Bears right now? Who is this quarterback? And so I'm not saying that that's the case with certain fans, but to your guys' point, where a lot of people are looking for the stars. They need the stars to kind of drive the interest and the value and the entertainment value in that game. Almost like, some people need to have action on a game in order to watch it. So to that point, you have those fringe marginal fans where it's like, you know what? Who the hell is Tommy DeVito? I'm not watching the Giants. We suck already. So if you had Daniel Jones out there and you're like, you know what? Our record isn't that great, but I just want to see what he does for the remainder of the season. Let's see if he can, capture some of that magic from last year. So I think it goes both ways. And, but all in all, if we can get a few Joshua Dobbs performances, I think Aiden O'Connell showed up pretty nicely for a motivated Raiders team. If we can get a few of these players to actually show up and make plays and lead their teams to victory, then that's going to kind of balance out the lack of notoriety and star power.
Yeah. The Redskins during that strike year, Gibbs was the coach. Joe Gibbs was the coach.
Yeah.
And they had a guy, believe it or not, who had just recently been released from prison, who was a quarterback at University of Tennessee named Tony Robinson. And he came in right off the bat and led them to a couple of wins and he was the toast of the town because the fans, for the most part, were backing the striking the scabs.
Yeah,
they were like, those striking players, they make so much money, screw them, and they fell behind this group of scab players. So
certainly the AFC North is probably the strongest division in the NFL. And I would say the NFC East is probably a close second, if not 1A and 1B. That's pretty much a given. But here's my question. Do you think that our Super Bowl representative will come from both of those divisions? With San Fran and Kansas City still lurking, do you think that a Cincinnati or Baltimore or a Dallas or Philadelphia represent in the Super Bowl?
Yeah, I don't mean to bail out on answering the question, but I think it really is too early to tell. I did say in the beginning when Cincinnati was down early and Burrow was injured and playing hurt and they were like 1-2 or 2-3, something like that. I was like, wait till he gets right. And Mixon was hurt. So they had some key pieces. T. Higgins was hurt. Now they're clicking on all cylinders. And so I would expect that you might find one of the two Super Bowl teams to be from a group that you wouldn't necessarily have at the top of the heap right now.
Okay.
But all those teams that you mentioned are certainly going to be right there at the end. I would expect the teams that you mentioned to be at least in the final four of their conference, in the semifinals of their conference.
What would be intriguing to see, and I know one of these teams I'm about to name are just talked about ad nauseum, but it would be great to see the Cowboys and Baltimore face off in the Super Bowl. The reason being is because Lamar and Dak look terrific in the regular season. And then when the postseason comes, when the playoffs come, that's when they kind of wet the bed a little. That's when they fall short. Things aren't clicking as they were during the regular season. So both of them, even though Dallas lost that game against Philadelphia, it wasn't like Dak was the reason. Dak did everything that he could to keep them competitive, and they were a knee away from taking the lead in that game. So I that would be intriguing to see coming from those two powerhouse divisions that we identified.
I don't see Dallas, making it. I see Philly before I see Dallas.
Yeah.
And, the injury to Diggs early on the defense, he's such a force, and he's such a playmaker that I think that he didn't necessarily take the heart and soul out of their defense, which is still pretty good. But man, that was a big blow to them. If there were, real Super Bowl chances, I like Philly in that division to advance further than I would Dallas, but you never know.
Yeah. Coach of the year thus far. We're midway. Who's your coach of the year? I know one coach that you talk about that you love, but I'm not going to say who, but you tell me, who do you think, who's your coach of the year so far?
I have to say Dan Campbell.
Okay.
I have to say that.
Okay.
To have kept that nucleus of the team together after last year when they had so many heartbreaking losses in the last seconds of like 3 or 4 games, balls bouncing off crossbars and stuff like that, losing games that if you lose one like that in 2 or 3 years, you still remember it. But they lost like 3 or 4 games like that.
Yeah.
And he kept everything together. His players are, tremendously 100% behind him. They're showing that they're together. And I'd have to say Campbell at this point. Love Tomlin. Don't get me wrong. But, I just think that Detroit is showing what the coach means to them.
Tomlin definitely has done a remarkable job. It's almost like Jordan back in the 90s, where each and every year he should be the MVP. But hey, you know what? We just can't give it to him. Let's give us a few to Karl Malone. Let's give one to Barkley. Let's give one to Hakeem. So but ultimately he is like the best. But that's how I feel about Tomlin a lot of times. Put the record aside, it's just the fact that they have such consistency. But Dan Campbell, to your point, when they got blown out by Baltimore a few weeks ago, and what he said to his team afterwards, and what he told the press afterwards, telling them that no excuses, we just got mollywopped. But it wasn't for a lack of energy. It wasn't for a lack of effort. So he didn't put any of the blame or the onus on the team. It was just that we just got beat,
Yeah.
So when he said that really was like, okay, I like that energy. I like that mentality. So I agree with you on Dan Campbell.
And let me just say too, for those of you that have not been mollywopped, it sticks with you.
Yeah.
It sticks with you for weeks when you get mollywopped. So
that broad Molly,
I hear you.
She knows how to whop. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah.
She's a whopper.
Yep.
Offensive MVP. Who's your guy?
Man, oh man, oh man. I'll let you go first on that one.
I'm gonna go Tyreek Hill on the sheer numbers and what he's doing. And really, Miami, they're still an unproven commodity because, looking at who they've beaten and who they haven't beaten, they're in that same boat with Buffalo, as far as Buffalo winning on the road or winning big games on the road. So, but in spite of that, Miami wouldn't be in a position that they're in without Tyreek Hill and just his dynamic ability to beat his man to, one of the fastest humans on earth.
Right.
And so I really like Tyreek Hill as the MVP offensively this year so far.
Yeah, it's funny that we would both sort of go in the wide receiver direction, but I would go with AJ Brown of the Eagles. I just he set a record, I think, 2 weeks ago by going 6 consecutive games with over 125 yards pass receiving in a game.
A
That's
monster.
that's the first time that's ever been done in the history of the NFL.
He's a monster.
6 games in a row with 120. The thing about him is he makes it look so easy. But no great receiver is anything like that without a great quarterback. And he has synergy with Jalen Hurts that coaches dream about.
Yeah.
He catches a lot of back shoulder passes, a lot of things where you can tell that they're just on the same page from so much practice together that defensive backs really don't have a chance if they're trying to guard AJ Brown in a conventional way, like cornerbacks and safeties are taught to do. You can't stop some of these things that quarterbacks and receivers have between them.
And there are no empty stats with him. These aren't just I'm just putting up these
Yeah,
gaudy numbers and
yeah,
it doesn't mean anything. They mean something.
yeah,
So
yeah,
ever since he's gone on that, just because he said, "Hey, I need the ball more." And once they started feeding him,
yeah.
all of a sudden that offense started waking up. So I do like the pick of AJ Brown. Last thing, defensive MVP thus far this season. I'm gonna go first. I'm gonna say Micah Parsons. I like what he has done, and to your point, with Trayvon Diggs going down early in the season, he's been the anchor of that Cowboy defensive line. And although Philly did get off and had some pretty good success, and a lot of that is on Hurts and the brotherly shove and putting themselves in positions to win, but they made it tough. They kept it close. They kept it to the point where our offense wasn't going to fall behind. So that game was competitive all the way to the very end. And so Micah Parsons, along with the rest of that defensive line and that defense as a whole, makes a huge difference. And that's why I really like Dallas to go a little further. And I've said this a few times already during the season. I like them to go a little further than they have in the past, possibly an FC championship game.
I don't disagree with you at all. I would say that that would be my pick as well at this point.
Okay. Real quick, some of the key Week 10 matchups upcoming. 49ers at Jaguars. 49ers coming fresh off a bye, going into Jacksonville. It's always statement games, but this is probably the premier game. Thoughts on that real quick?
Man, it's huge. And I think the line on that game is 3 points. Niners by 3.
Yeah.
That's a tough one. I mean, for the 49ers, look, if they lose, that's 4 losses in a row. And then you have to wonder, where they are. Are they going to be struggling to even make the playoffs at that point?
Man.
I think that Purdy has kind of come back down to earth.
Has he?
From what people thought he was. And Trevor Lawrence continues to get better. The Jags defense continues to get better. They won 2 games over in London back to back, and that just set them off. They were my pick at the beginning of the year to win that division, and I'm not backing off that now. So the superstars for San Francisco need to really step up this week and show what they're made of. That McCaffrey's got to make it happen, and Purdy's going to have to show up as well.
Oh my God, they better not lose 4 in a row, man.
Yeah.
Browns at Ravens. Division game.
Yeah.
Browns. They got Deshaun back, albeit it was against a very weak Arizona, but they handled their business. You can only beat who's in front of you. They handled their business. They weren't out there struggling, but they're going against the Ravens team. Baltimore, I don't know. You see what they're doing, especially at home. So
yeah.
So I like that as a premier game. The Browns, they've already did they beat the Ravens in Cleveland already if I'm not mistaken.
Ah,
We
gosh,
we may need to fact
you
check
got
that.
yeah, we might need to fact check that. But I like, the way Baltimore's playing. I just think that you have to go with the hot hand right here. And with Deshaun Watson just having one game back under his belt, as good as their defense is, I don't know if they can withstand the onslaught of Baltimore the way they're clicking right now. But it's funny how a team that has the type of pursuit that Cleveland does, right? The defensive pass rush, Myles Garrett and company. It's interesting how they can turn the tide of a game.
Yeah.
I was talking to somebody yesterday about the fact that so many games are won in the first quarter. You get a team that goes on an 11, 12 play drive early. They're up 7-0. They kick off. The other team goes 3 and out. And then the team that went on the long drive goes on another long drive. It doesn't take but 2 or 3 long drives to start wearing out a defense. So Cleveland's only hope, I believe, against Baltimore is going to be if they can get a couple of turnovers early. And Baltimore will turn the ball over.
They will.
So Cleveland needs some of that if they're going to stick in that game.
And they're capable.
Yeah, they are capable.
They're very capable of forcing turnovers. So like you said, I agree with that. Kill that momentum early. If they gain that steam early, it's hard to beat them. But the Ravens notoriously do not play well from behind or if they're even. So I do agree with that. Some other intriguing matchups, Saints at Vikings, I think is going to be a good matchup. Texans at the Bengals. I mean, it's intriguing because of what CJ has done up to this point, but the Bengals look like they're back to full strength. So I'm just curious to see how the young QB does in Cincy. Now, here's the matchup that we've all been waiting for. Panthers at the Bears.
That's what I'm going to be watching on Sunday. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we decided to, kind of figure out some names for this matchup because ultimately there's something at play, draft positioning. So so I had a few, and I'm not sure if you had some. Tell me what you think.
Yeah, go ahead.
The Boo Hoo Bowl.
I like it.
Okay. Just a little background for our viewers. Boo Hoo Bowl, Caleb Williams, they just lost to Washington in USC, in Southern Cal. And at the end of the game, he did like a semi-Lambo leap into the stands. And I think he was hugging his mother. And they had the game program kind of covering his face. And you just saw these gyrations in his upper body because he was emotional. He was crying because, and you know what? It's not funny. It's admirable to see that kind of passion, but it was kind of funny to kind of see him, gyrating and boo-hooing. But the Boo-Hoo Bowl.
Yeah.
How about the Kick Them in the Penix Bowl?
That's one that you probably have to explain to the majority of the people watching.
The Kick Them in the Penix Bowl. There was this meme some time ago. There was a little kid, and it went viral, and it was like, and we kick them in the penis. And so this is the Kick Them in the Penix Bowl with Michael Penix Jr., the QB.
Left hand.
And a lefty from Washington, fresh off a victory over USC. He is lauded as a top pick as well. My preference would be a Michael Penix. I love what he does, just from what I've seen. Another beneficiary of the transfer portal that's opened up in the NCAA. So the Kick 'em in the Penix Bowl. Okay. One more. The Play Like Manure for Shador Bowl.
So if you're really seriously looking for critique on your names for this epic confrontation coming up on Sunday, that last one I think is just a little bit too lengthy, a little bit too drawn out. So I think you could accomplish as much by just calling it the Shador Bowl.
The Shador Bowl. Shador, as in Shador Sanders for the Colorado Buffaloes, whose sweater that
Yeah.
Raj sported earlier this
Right.
season
And
prominently.
early in the season.
Absolutely.
Right. And I thought about wearing it again, but
Hey, folks have been asking for it.
yeah, well, they're going to have to at least win one more game before I put that back on.
They may not be bowl eligible.
But no, they probably won't be.
Oh my god.
And that'll be embarrassing.
That would be quite the embarrassment.
But for me, you know, it was as simple as the toilet
bowl.
You know, it was that's the only thing I really can't
beat it. Can't beat it. All right. So real quick, we got some fan mail. What we got here, Gus from Iowa, Des Moines, Des Moines, as we used to call it as kids.
Capital
the
of
capital.
Iowa. Their newspaper is the Des Moines
Des Moines Register. Oh my God, look at you.
I know those.
Hello.
I know those things. Yeah.
The opening up the Daily Rag, as they used to put it.
That's right.
So Gus, he says, "Hey gentlemen, this is Gus from Des Moines, Iowa. Big fan. Thank you, Gus." He said, "What team has the best home field advantage today?" Let me start. Green Bay was always looked at as this, oh my God, this is the place where you cannot, win. The fans are crazy. Usually the weather's nuts. Once you get into this time of year, that's long gone. That went away with, Aaron Rodgers. he took all that fear away. But today, I think Cincy has a pretty tough home field crowd. I like Cincy. I like Cleveland. I don't know. Who do you think?
I was thinking Cincinnati right off the bat too, but the more I think about it, I just think that the Eagles fans are probably at the top of that list, and not only because of the fact that they're loud and rabid and stuff like that. I think that at times they probably inject a little bit of fear into the opposing team about what those fans might do, as they're leaving the field or whatever, or even coming onto the field. So yeah, Philly fans are a whole different breed, and they travel well too.
I think the old, what is it, the Veterans Memorial Stadium where they used to play?
Veterans Memorial, yeah.
They had a jail.
They had a police precinct at the bottom of the stadium. Absolutely, yeah. They did.
Gotta love Philly.
And it was always full. Yeah.
Gotta love Philly. But yeah, definitely Philly. Pittsburgh, terrible towels.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I can name a few places where, like, LA, the Rams or Chargers.
Raiders.
Yeah, I think they are they've made the transition nicely. I think the stadium is just a little too nice for Raider fans. It's not, I'm used to seeing a baseball diamond on half of the field, for the first 2 or 3 months. Right. It looks a little too
field goal kicks from right next to second base.
Right. It looks a little too buttoned up for me. So so Cincy, and who else would we say? Pittsburgh. Yeah. So
and Philly.
Absolutely. So Gus, so Cincy, Philly, those are probably top two right there in our opinions right there. YouTube comment. He said, "Great show, guys. 2 questions." He said, "There are a lot of betting apps, FanDuel, MGM, Underdog, etc. Can you rank your top 10? We're not going to do that. Sorry, Skip Wit. And maybe a question for Chris. So we will get with Chris on his next go around and kind of get and formulate maybe a top 5. We're not going to do a top 10 because I don't think there are 10 reputable betting apps.
I don't even know.
Right. So we'll do something with that the next time Chris comes aboard. But he did also ask, I'd like to know you guys' Super Bowl picks and why. That's a little too early. I did I floated out there Baltimore and Dallas. That's more of it'll be a cool matchup. But by no stretch am I even trying to make that that call right now. But ultimately, since gun to the head, I'd probably say, the 2 best teams. And that will probably be Philly and Cincy. And so that's not too big of a stretch.
Well, Cincinnati is trailing Baltimore right now, so by like a game and a half. So when they play head to head, that's really gonna say tell a lot right there about which one of those teams really has a chance to go the whole way.
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
so their head. I'll look at Baltimore and Cincinnati over the next few weeks as most likely to use a tennis term, holding
Yeah.
serve, and certainly winning the games that they're supposed
Right.
to win. But when they play each other, that's going to be where the rubber meets the road. And I think that both of those teams, I believe, have a very legit chance to make it all the way.
Indeed. Can't wait. We're getting into that stretch where things are getting really exciting. Upcoming guests. We're gonna probably have Chris back. We have a verbal on a Super Bowl champ, Raj.
We don't want to tell you who it is yet. We definitely have a verbal commitment from a Super Bowl champion, 6-year veteran in the NFL with quite an impressive record of statistics, in addition to having a Super Bowl ring. So right now, we're just trying to nail down which week he's going to be on. Hopefully, if that goes well, he'll come on again beyond that. But we're anxious to tell you who it is. We just want to wait till we get a commitment on the date. And then hopefully by next week, we'll be able to tell you who the guest is. And we'll be asking you to chime in and give us some questions that you would like to ask, when he's on. Because I would imagine that we'll be dedicating a large portion of that show to that interview.
For sure. And we've already given you 2 hints. Super Bowl champ, played in the league for 6 years. So get your Googles on, do your research, see if you can figure it out. Whoever figures it out, if you're able to figure out who we have before we announce it, a toaster oven, a box of Pop-Tarts, we got to get them something.
Well, this time of year, I think a crock pot is a good thing for this time of year. But I know that we have one listener and subscriber that has an inside track on knowing who it is. So, disclaimer: he's ineligible for the crock pot.
And if he says a word,
he knows
the consequences.
He knows the consequences. That's right. Yeah. So.
All right. But no, I'm excited. Can't wait. Got some great guests, some returning guests as well. So be on the lookout for that, everyone. It's that time, Raj. It's that time. Like you say, the rubber meets the road. This is where we earn our paychecks here on the DAMW. Have you gotten your check lately? I haven't received my check, but nonetheless,
I haven't.
Okay,
I haven't. Yeah.
But let's go ahead and get into it. Our pick 6, my picks, Raj's picks. Like I said, we went 4-2 last week. We are back in the groove. We got our mojo back. So let's do it. So I'm gonna start out first. I'm going with 49ers -3 in Jacksonville. Now, we already just talked about how this could be 4 losses in a row. Now, that would be just egregious and just, oh my God. That I would feel for the San Francisco fan for them to be on such a high as the best team in the league for the first 5 or 6 weeks to being potentially the biggest letdown in a matter of 3 to 4 weeks. So they're fresh off of a bye, -3 in Jacksonville. I love it. Lions and Chargers in LA. Lions and Chargers over under. The number is 48.5. I've been pretty good on these over unders. I like this over the 48.5. Lions can put up numbers. Chargers can put up numbers. I think it's relatively a easy win, easy number for them to hit. I've done other games where the over-under was 53 points. 48 seems relatively low for these two teams, so I do like the over in this game, 48.5.
And it's a fast track too. It's going to be a fast track.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's, Jameer Gibbs and and just all the weapons that are out there. What's the tight end? Everett from the Chargers. I love him.
Right.
Big fan of his. So I like that Lions Chargers over the 48.5. Finally, I do like the Bills -7.5 in Buffalo against the Broncos, who are fresh off of a bye. Like I said, the Bills are feast or famine, and that really is dependent upon where they're playing. And when they're playing in Buffalo, they're feasting on their opponents. When they're playing on the road, not so much. It's almost like they're fasting. But in Buffalo, I do like it. That's a big number. I usually don't go with those large numbers, but 7.5, I'm pretty confident that they're going to make this. This game might get out of hand by the second quarter. The pressure is going to get to the Broncos. They're going to have Russell running all over the place. So I do like the Bills -7.5 at home versus the Broncos. Raj, your turn.
Yeah, I think it's a perfect time for Buffalo to get right if they're going to get right. San Francisco on the other hand, going down to Jacksonville, they could have used a much easier opponent this week to get off of their little skid.
Yeah.
So they got a little bit of a tougher thing to go. But anyway, Reggie, I just wanted to say I love this time of year. It was still in the early part of fall. The frost is on the pumpkin. The fodder's in the shock. Poem by James Whitcomb Riley, which you all probably have read,
of course.
And it's just that time of year that makes you think about football. I don't know, hot drinks, and so on and so forth. Roaring fires. That whole, I'm just trying to build a little mental picture there. But anyway, all that being said, I have 3 hot picks for you to fit into that little picture. And that would be the Bengals -7 at home against Houston. And the reason I like that in part is because I think that even though Stroud has had a couple of great weeks in a row, and last week was epic in terms of what he did, rookie record, 470 yards passing, 5 touchdowns, and in that tremendous game-winning drive, I think that he's going to find Cincinnati at home and their defense to be quite a bit more stingy than what he's been up against the last couple of weeks, like with Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's going to be a little bit too much of a test for him. So that's why I like Cincinnati. Pittsburgh at home, -3 against Green Bay. I love that. I still don't think Green Bay has hit any kind of a stride at all. And Pittsburgh at home, as long as the weather is half decent, I like them over Green Bay. I think they'll cover that pretty easily. The Raiders are favored by 1.5 this week at home. Now, a big reason that I like the Raiders is that I was watching, I don't know if you ever watch Pat McAfee's show, former Colts player. He has a very popular show on every night pretty much. And he had Max Crosby, the huge defensive end from the Raiders on during the week. And you could feel the confidence coming out of him. And he said that it's throughout the organization, with their new head coach. Who's the interim head coach?
Antonio Pierce.
And he said that the players are 100% bought in on Antonio Pierce. They love what he's bringing. They wanted nothing to do with Josh McDaniel anymore. And so for them, they're 100% into it and fired up. And I like them to beat the Jets, who, remember, are coming off of a Monday night loss. So on a short week. So let's recap again our picks for the week. Yours again, Reg?
And real quick, before we do that, you're right. The Raiders, they're playing inspired. I think they can keep that momentum going, and the Jets are a good team for them to kind of keep rolling. But one thing that you pointed out earlier in the season, and this is week one. This is week one. or week 2 rather, because that's when Aaron Rodgers had the Achilles tear, and we talked about it on week 2's episode. But you had mentioned how Aaron Rodgers' presence could be important, and saw him. He started out in the booth. Now you see him on the field. So I think what you said earlier in the season, you're starting to see that. So that might be beneficial for Zach Wilson, having him in his ear. He's on the sidelines like a coach, like we had talked about, and you had mentioned that. So I wanted to point that out. That is something that you pointed out earlier in the week. Look, folks, we don't just be talking on here. We spit prophecy. Okay. So if you want prophecy, tune in. Okay.
Preach.
Hello. But I digress. But just a quick recap. My picks. I have 49ers -3 at Jacksonville. Lions and Chargers over 48.5. And then I got the Bills -7.5 in Buffalo versus the Broncos. Raj?
Like it. And we're going to take it to the house. We're going to be, we're looking at 6-0 this week. 4-2 is the minimum this week and going forward against the spread. We're going to get that season-long percentage back up over 66% where we were earlier and blow it out from there. I have Cincinnati -7 against Houston in Cincinnati. I have Pittsburgh, the Steelers -3 over the Packers in Pittsburgh, and the Raiders +1.5 against the Jets, again coming off a Monday night loss, off a short week, having to travel west. I just think it's going to be a little bit too much for them, even with Aaron Rodgers in the ear of the quarterback. So those are my picks, and I'm looking for a clean sweep.
Amen to that. Real quick, last thing. Are you familiar with the saga over in Michigan with the cheating and the spying and all that nonsense?
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
I am.
Quick question. Do you think Jim Harbaugh will be in NFL coaching next year? Be back in NFL coaching next year?
Again, gun to the head type thing. If I had to say yes or no, I would say yes.
Okay.
I would say yes, because the heat is on and at Michigan, and you know how the NCAA is so litigious anyway, right? They'll bring charges against any. They love to be in court. They love to levy punishment. That's what they do. So I think that Harbaugh is going to have so many suitors in the NFL after this year, because how many on average every year?
At least
at the end of the year. At least 7 or 8 NFL teams are looking for a new coach, and Harbaugh is always going to be at the top of that list.
Yeah.
So if I had to bet, I would say he'll be in the NFL next.
Did you just drop a Glenn Fry? The heat is on.
Yeah, I did. Okay. And it wasn't intentional. Again, it's a Freud thing. My psychiatrist is talking to me about Freud a lot, and so that's all that is. Wasn't intentional.
No. I love the reference.
But the heat is on.
Heat is on. Yes.
It's on the street.
On the street. And folks, we're back on the street. You know what I mean. Week 10 has been concluded. We're at least going 4-2. Like Rod said, our baseline is 4-2, 66%. So look for those picks right there to really click this weekend. But that's our show. Raj, any last words?
Just tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell everybody you know to join the podcast, like and subscribe, and help us, get to where we need to get, to where you'll look back someday and say, hey, I know these guys.
Word.
So we appreciate the support.
Absolutely.
Talk to you guys next week.
Peace.